Chapter 9. He burst in, shouting oaths that were dreadful to hear, and caught me in the act of tucking his son away in the kitchen cupboard. Hareton was filled with a healthy fear of facing either his father's wild affection or his mad rage. In one case, he risked being smothered with hugs and kisses, and in the other, being tossed into the fire or slammed against the wall. The poor child stayed perfectly still wherever I placed him. "I finally figured it out!" Hindley shouted, yanking me back by the neck like I was some unruly dog. "By all that's holy and damned, you've conspired to kill that child. Now, Hayes, I understand why he's always out of my sight, but with Satan's help, I'll make you swallow this carving knife, Nellie. Don't laugh. I've just shoved Kenneth headfirst into the Black Horse Marsh, and 2 deaths are as good as 1, and I won't rest until I've killed some of you. But I'm not fond of the carving knife, Mr. Hindley," I replied. "It's been used on red herrings. I'd prefer to be shot, if you don't mind." "You'd rather be damned," he retorted. "And damned you shall be. No law in England can stop a man from keeping his home in order, and mine is a disgrace. Open your mouth!" He brandished the knife, pressing its tip between my teeth. But I was never one to be truly frightened by his madness. I spat it out, declaring it tasted vile. I wouldn't accept it under any circumstances. "Oh," he said, letting me go. "I see that hideous little villain isn't Hareton. I apologize, Nell. If that's the case, he deserves to be skinned alive for not rushing to greet me, and for shrieking as if I was some kind of monster. You unnatural little wretch. Come here. I'll show you how to deceive a well-meaning, misguided father. Now don't you think the boy would look better with his hair cut short? It makes a dog more aggressive, and I do love a bit of fierceness. Fetch me some scissors, something fierce and tidy. Besides, it's a ridiculous affectation, a devilish vanity to treasure our ears. We're fools enough without them. Hush, child, hush. Well then, you are my darling. There, dry your eyes. There's a good boy. Give me a kiss." "What? You won't? Kiss me, Hareton. Damn you, kiss me. By God, as if I would raise such a creature. As surely as I'm alive, I'll break the brat's neck." Poor Hareton was wailing and struggling in his father's arms with all his might, and his cries only grew louder when he was carried upstairs and lifted over the banister. I shouted that he would scare the child into a fit and rushed to save him. As I reached them, Hindley leaned forward on the railing to listen to a noise below, almost forgetting what he held in his hands. "Who is that?" he asked, hearing someone approaching the bottom of the stairs. I leaned forward too, intending to signal Heathcliff, whose footsteps I recognized, to stop. Just as my gaze left Hareton, he suddenly sprang free from the careless hold on him and fell. There was barely a moment to feel horror before we saw the little rascal was safe. Heathcliff arrived just in time. Instinctively, he caught him mid-fall and set him back on his feet, then looked up to see who had caused the mishap. His face, upon seeing Mr. Earnshaw above, was as blank as a marxer who sold a winning lottery ticket for a pittance, only to realize he's lost a fortune. It was a silent scream of anguish at having unwittingly thwarted his own revenge. Had it been dark, I suspect he might have tried to correct his mistake by smashing Hareton's skull on the steps. But we had witnessed the rescue, and soon I was below, clutching my precious charge to my heart. Hindley came down more slowly, sobered and embarrassed. "This is your fault, Ellen," he said. "You should have kept him out of sight. You should have taken him from me. Is he hurt anywhere?" "Hurt!" I cried out in anger. "If he isn't killed, he'll end up an idiot." "Oh, how can his mother not rise from her grave to see how you treat him? You're worse than a heathen, treating your own flesh and blood like that." He tried to touch the child, who, once he was with me, quickly sobbed away his fear. But the moment his father laid a finger on him, he screamed even louder than before, struggling as if he might go into convulsions. "You will not lay a hand on him," I insisted. "He despises you. They all do. That's the truth. What a happy family you have, and what a fine state you've brought it to." "I'll reach an even finer state yet, Nellie," laughed the misguided man, regaining his coldness. "For now, take yourself and him away. And listen, Heathcliff, make sure you're out of my sight and hearing too. I wouldn't kill you tonight, unless, perhaps, I decide to set the house on fire. But that depends on my mood." As he said this, he took a pint bottle of brandy from the dresser and poured some into a glass. "No, don't!" I pleaded. "Mr. Hindley, please heed this warning. Show some compassion for this unfortunate boy, even if you have no regard for yourself." "Anyone would be better for him than I am," he replied. "Think of your own soul," I urged, trying to take the glass from his hand. "Not me! In fact, I'll take great pleasure in damning it to punish its creator," he declared, blaspheming. "Here's to its damnation." He drank the spirits and impatiently ordered us to leave, ending his command with a string of vile curses too dreadful to repeat or recall. "It's a shame he can't drink himself to death," Heathcliff remarked, muttering a string of curses back as the door closed. "He's trying his hardest, but his constitution won't let him. Mr. Kenneth says he'd bet his mare that Hindley will outlive any man around Gimmerton and go to his grave an old sinner, unless some extraordinary event intervenes." I went into the kitchen and sat down to soothe my little lamb to sleep. I thought Heathcliff had gone out to the barn. Later, I found out he had only made it as far as the other side of the settle, where he threw himself onto a bench by the wall, away from the fire, and stayed silent. I was rocking Hareton on my knee, humming a lullaby that began, "It was late in the night, and the children cried." The mother beneath the earth heard them, when Miss Cathy, who had been listening to the commotion from her room, peeked in and whispered, "Are you alone, Nellie?" "Yes, miss," I replied. She stepped inside and moved toward the fireplace. Expecting her to speak, I glanced up. Her face was marked by a troubled, anxious look. Her lips parted slightly, as if to say something, and she took a breath. But it slipped out as a sigh instead of words. I returned to my song, still mindful of her recent behavior. "Where's Heathcliff?" she asked, cutting through my melody. "He's busy in the stable," I replied. He didn't contradict me. Perhaps he had drifted into a nap. Another long silence stretched out, during which I noticed a few tears fall from Catherine's cheek onto the stone floor. Is she regretting her disgraceful actions? I wondered. That would be a first. But she can reach that conclusion on her own. I won't assist her. No, she seemed to care little for anything beyond her own affairs. Oh dear, she exclaimed finally. I'm very unhappy. What a shame, I remarked. You're difficult to satisfy. With so many friends and so few worries, yet you can't find contentment. Nellie, can you keep a secret for me? She asked, kneeling beside me, her enchanting eyes meeting mine with a look that could dissolve any irritation, even when one has every reason to hold on to it. Is it worth keeping? I asked, my tone softening. Yes, it is, and it's been troubling me. I need to let it out. I need your advice. Today, Edgar Linton proposed to me, and I've given him an answer. But before I reveal whether I accepted or refused, I want you to tell me what you think I should have done. Honestly, Miss Catherine, how could I possibly know? I replied. Given the spectacle you made in front of him this afternoon, I might suggest it would be wise to refuse him. If he proposed after that, he must either be incredibly naive or recklessly bold. If you keep talking like that, I won't tell you anything more, she said, rising with a hint of irritation. I accepted him, Nellie. Quickly, tell me if I was wrong. You accepted him. Then what's the point of debating it? You've given your word, and there's no going back now. But tell me, should I have done it? Should I? She burst out, her voice edged with irritation, rubbing her hands together and frowning. There are many factors to weigh before that question can be properly answered, I replied, with deliberate gravity. First and foremost, do you love Mr. Edgar? Who could resist? Of course I do, she said. I then proceeded with a series of questions, which, for a young woman of 22, was not unwise. Why do you love him, Miss Cathy? That's absurd. I just do. That's enough. Not at all. You must explain why. Well, because he's handsome and enjoyable to be around. That's not good, I remarked. And because he's young and lively, still not good. And because he loves me. That's only possible. And he'll be wealthy, and I want to be the most prominent woman in the area, and I'll take pride in having such a husband. That's the worst reason of all. And now, tell me how you love him. Like everyone loves. Don't be ridiculous, Nellie. Not at all. Answer me. I love the ground he walks on, the air above him, everything he touches, and every word he speaks. I love all his expressions, all his actions, and him completely and utterly. There you have it. And why? You're making fun of me. It's incredibly mean. This is no joke to me, the young woman said, frowning and turning her face toward the fire. I'm not joking at all, Miss Catherine, I replied. You love Mr. Edgar because he's handsome, young, cheerful, wealthy, and he loves you, though the last part doesn't matter. You'd likely love him without that, and with it you wouldn't, unless he had those other qualities. No, of course not. I'd only feel sorry for him, maybe even hate him, if he were unattractive and boring. But there are many other handsome, wealthy young men in the world, possibly more handsome and richer than he is. What stops you from loving them? If there are any, they're not in my path. I've seen no one like Edgar. You might see some, and he won't always be handsome and young, and he might not always be rich. He exists in the now, and my concern is solely with the present. I wish you'd speak sensibly. Well, that clarifies things. If you're focused only on the present, then marry Mr. Linton. I don't need your approval for that. I will marry him, yet you haven't told me if I'm making the right choice. Absolutely right. If marrying for the present is what's right. Now, let's discuss what's troubling you. Your brother will be pleased. The older couple likely won't object. You'll leave a chaotic, uncomfortable home for one that's wealthy and respectable. And you love Edgar, and Edgar loves you. Everything seems straightforward. What's the problem? Here and here, Catherine exclaimed, striking her forehead with one hand and her chest with the other. Wherever the soul resides, in my soul and in my heart, I'm certain I'm wrong. That's quite perplexing. I can't understand it. It's my secret. But if you promise not to ridicule me, I'll try to explain. I can't articulate it clearly, but I'll convey how I feel. She sat beside me again, her expression growing more somber and serious, her clasped hands trembling. Nellie, do you ever have strange dreams? She asked suddenly, after a few moments of thought. Yes, occasionally, I replied. So do I. I've had dreams in my life that have lingered with me, altering my thoughts. They've seeped into me like wine into water, changing the very hue of my mind. Here's one. I'm going to share it, but promise not to laugh at any part of it. Oh, please don't, Miss Catherine, I exclaimed. We're gloomy enough without summoning ghosts and visions to trouble us. Come on, cheer up and be yourself. Look at little Hareton. He's dreaming nothing dark. See how sweetly he smiles in his sleep. Yes, and how sweetly his father curses in his solitude. You probably remember him when he was just like that chubby child, almost as young and innocent. But Nellie, I must insist you listen. It won't take long, and I can't find it in me to be cheerful tonight. I refuse to hear it. I refuse, I repeated quickly. I was always superstitious about dreams back then, and I still am. Catherine had a peculiar darkness about her that made me anxious, as if I could sense an ominous prediction forming, a glimpse of some impending disaster. She seemed troubled but didn't continue her thought. Instead, she shifted topics and began again shortly after. Nellie, if I were in heaven, I'd be utterly miserable. That's because you're not meant for heaven, I replied. All sinners would find it unbearable there. But that's not the reason. I once dreamt I was there. I've told you, Miss Catherine, I won't listen to your dreams. I'm going to bed. I interrupted once more. She laughed and held me back as I made a move to leave my seat. It's nothing, she exclaimed. I was just going to say that heaven didn't feel like home to me. I cried my heart out, wanting to return to earth. The angels were so furious they threw me out onto the heath at the top of Wuthering Heights, where I woke up, sobbing with joy. That should explain my secret, as well as anything else. I have no more right to marry Edgar Linton than I do to be in heaven. And if that wicked man hadn't brought Heathcliff so low, I wouldn't have considered it. Marrying Heathcliff now would degrade me, so he'll never know how much I love him. And it's not because he's handsome, Nellie, but because he's more a part of me than I am myself. Our souls are crafted from the same essence, his and mine. While Linton's is as distinct from ours as a moonbeam is from lightning, or frost from fire. Before she finished speaking, I became aware of Heathcliff's presence. A slight movement caught my attention, and I turned to see him rise from the bench and slip away silently. He had stayed just long enough to hear Catherine declare that marrying him would be a degradation, and then he left without hearing more. My companion, seated on the ground, was shielded by the back of the bench and didn't notice his presence or his departure. But I was startled and urged her to be quiet. "Why?" she asked, looking around nervously. "Joseph is here," I replied, just as I heard the roll of his cartwheels approaching on the road. "Heathcliff will come in with him. I'm not sure if he wasn't at the door just now." "Oh, he couldn't have overheard me at the door," she said. "Give me Hareton while you prepare supper, and when it's ready, invite me to join you. I want to ease my troubled conscience and convince myself that Heathcliff has no inkling of these things. He doesn't, does he? He doesn't know what it means to be in love." "I see no reason why he shouldn't know, just as you do," I replied. "And if you are his choice, he'll be the most unfortunate soul ever born. The moment you become Mrs. Linton, he loses everything, friendship, love, all of it. Have you thought about how you'll handle the separation and how he'll cope with being utterly abandoned in the world? Because, Miss Catherine, utterly abandoned, are separated," she burst out, her voice brimming with indignation. "Who would dare separate us, I ask? They'd meet the fate of Milo." "Not while I draw breath, Ellen. No living being. Every Linton on earth could vanish into thin air before I'd agree to forsake Heathcliff. Oh, that's not my intention. That's not my meaning. I wouldn't become Mrs. Linton if such a price were required. He'll mean as much to me as he always has. Edgar must overcome his aversion and at least tolerate him. He will, once he understands how I truly feel about him. Nellie, you probably think I'm a selfish wretch now, but have you ever considered that if Heathcliff and I were to marry, we'd end up penniless? Whereas, if I marry Linton, I can help Heathcliff rise above and escape my brother's control." "With your husband's money, Miss Catherine?" I asked. "You'll find him not as easy to manipulate as you expect. And though I'm not the best judge, I think that's the worst reason you've given yet for marrying young Linton." "It's not," she snapped back. "It's the best reason. The others were just to indulge my whims, and to please Edgar as well. This is for someone who embodies my feelings for Edgar and myself. I can't quite put it into words, but surely you and everyone else have some sense that there's a part of you that exists beyond yourself. What would be the point of my existence if I were entirely confined here? My greatest sorrows in this world have been Heathcliff's sorrows, and I've watched and felt them from the start. My deepest reason for living is him. If everything else disappeared and he remained, I would still exist. And if everything else stayed and he vanished, the universe would become a vast stranger to me. I wouldn't feel like I was part of it. My love for Linton is like the leaves in the woods. I know time will change it, just as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff is like the eternal rocks beneath, not a source of visible joy, but essential. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. He is always, always in my thoughts, not as a source of joy, any more than I am a constant joy to myself, but as an integral part of my being. So don't speak of us being apart again. It's impossible. And she stopped, burying her face in the folds of my dress. But I pulled it away sharply. I had lost patience with her foolishness. If I can make any sense of your nonsense, miss, I said, it only convinces me that you are unaware of the responsibilities you take on in marriage, or else that you are a wicked, unprincipled girl. But don't burden me with more secrets. I won't promise to keep them. You'll keep this one? She asked, eagerly. No, I won't promise, I repeated. She was about to press the issue when Joseph's entrance cut our conversation short, and Catherine moved to a corner to tend to Hareton while I prepared supper. Once it was ready, my fellow servant and I argued over who should take some to Mr. Hindley. We didn't resolve it until the food was nearly cold. We finally agreed to let him ask if he wanted any, as we were particularly wary of approaching him after he'd been alone for some time. And why hasn't anything come in from the field by now? What is he up to? That Hadel scoundrel, the old man demanded, scanning the room for Heathcliff. I'll fetch him, I said. He's probably in the barn. I went to call him, but there was no response. When I returned, I quietly told Catherine that Heathcliff had likely overheard much of what she had said. I recounted how I saw him leave the kitchen, just as she was criticizing her brother's behavior towards him. Startled, she sprang up, hastily set Hareton down on the bench, and rushed off to find Heathcliff herself, not pausing to question her own agitation or consider how her words might have affected him. She was gone so long that Joseph suggested we shouldn't wait any longer. He slyly guessed they were deliberately staying away to avoid his lengthy blessing. He declared they were ill-mannered enough for anything, and on their behalf, he added a special prayer to his usual lengthy pre-meal supplication, and would have added another at the end if his young mistress hadn't interrupted with an urgent order for him to head down the road and find Heathcliff, wherever he had wandered, and bring him back immediately. I need to speak to him, and I must before I go upstairs, she insisted. The gate is open. He's out of earshot, because he didn't answer when I shouted as loud as I could from the top of the hill. Joseph initially resisted, but her determination left no room for argument. Finally, he put on his hat and grumbled his way out the door. Meanwhile, Catherine paced the floor, exclaiming, "Where could he be? Where on earth is he?" What did I say, Nellie? I've forgotten. Was he upset with my mood this afternoon? Please tell me what I said that might have hurt him. I really wish he'd come back. I really do. You're making a fuss over nothing, I exclaimed, though I felt a bit uneasy myself. You're frightened by such a small thing. Surely there's no reason to worry if Heathcliff decides to take a moonlit walk on the moors, Or even if he's too sulky to talk to us and is hiding in the hayloft, I'll bet he's lurking there. Just watch. I'll find him. I set off to continue my search, but it ended in disappointment, and Joseph's efforts were just as fruitless. "That lad's getting worse and worse," he remarked upon returning. "He's left the gate wide open, and Mrs. Pony had trampled down 2 rows of corn and wandered right into the meadow. However, the master will be furious tomorrow, and rightly so. He's the very picture of patience with such careless, troublesome creatures. Patience itself, he is. But he won't always be like that. You'll all see. You mustn't push him too far for no reason." "Have you found Heathcliff, you fool?" Catherine interrupted sharply. "Have you been searching for him as I instructed?" "I'd sooner look was a horse," he replied. "That would make more sense. But I can't search for either horse or man on a night like this. It's as black as the chimney. And Heathcliff's not the kind to come at my call. Perhaps he'll be more inclined to listen to you." It was indeed an unusually dark evening for summer. The clouds seemed ready to unleash a storm, and I suggested we all sit down, as the impending rain would surely bring him home without further effort. Yet Catherine refused to be calmed. She paced restlessly from the gate to the door, unable to find peace, and eventually settled on one side of the wall near the road. Ignoring my protests, the rumbling thunder and the large raindrops beginning to fall around her, she stayed there, calling out intermittently, then listening, and finally breaking into tears. She could outcry Hareton or any child with her passionate sobbing. Around midnight, as we remained awake, the storm hit the heights with full force. The wind howled alongside the thunder, and one or the other snapped a tree at the corner of the building. A massive branch crashed onto the roof, knocking down part of the east chimney stack, sending a cascade of stones and soot into the kitchen fire. We thought a lightning bolt had struck right among us. Joseph dropped to his knees, pleading with the Lord to remember the patriarchs Noah and Lot and, as in ancient times, spare the righteous even as he punished the wicked. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a judgment upon us as well. In my mind, the Jonah of the situation was Mr. Earnshaw. I rattled the handle of his door to see if he was still among the living. He answered loudly enough, in a way that made my companion shout even more, insisting on the clear difference between saints like himself and sinners like his master. But the commotion subsided after 20 minutes, leaving us all unscathed, except for Cathy. She was thoroughly soaked, having stubbornly refused to take cover, standing there without a bonnet or shawl, letting the rain drench her hair and clothes. She came inside, lay down on the settle, completely drenched, turned her face to the back, and covered it with her hands. "Well, miss," I said, touching her shoulder, "are you trying to catch your death? Do you know what time it is? 12:30. Come on, go to bed. There's no point in waiting any longer for that foolish boy. He's gone to Gimmerton, and he'll stay there now. He knows we wouldn't wait for him this late. At least he knows only Mr. Hindley would be up, and he'd rather not have the master open the door for him." No, he's not at Gimmerton," said Joseph. "I never doubt he's at the bottom of a bog hole. This visit wasn't for nothing, and I want you to be careful, miss. You might be next. Thank heaven for everything." It all works together for good for those who are chosen and picked out from the rubbish. You know what the scripture says. And he began quoting several passages, directing us to chapters and verses where we could find them. Having unsuccessfully urged the stubborn girl to get up and change out of her wet clothes, I left him preaching and her shivering, and went to bed with little Hareton, who slept soundly as if everyone around him were asleep too. I heard Joseph continue reading for a while. Then I recognized his slow steps on the ladder, and soon after I fell asleep. Coming down later than usual, I noticed, by the sunlight piercing through the cracks in the shutters, that Miss Catherine was still seated near the fireplace. The house door was ajar, allowing light to enter through its open windows. Hindley had come out and stood on the kitchen hearth, looking haggard and sleepy. "What's wrong, Cathy?" he was saying as I entered. "You look as miserable as a drowned puppy. Why are you so damp and pale, child?" "I've been wet," she replied reluctantly, "and I'm cold, that's all." "Oh, she is naughty." I wept, realizing the master was relatively sober. "She got caught in yesterday evening's downpour, and she's been sitting there all night. I couldn't convince her to move." Mr. Earnshaw looked at us with surprise. "All night?" he repeated. "What kept her up? Surely not fear of the thunder? That ended hours ago." Neither of us wanted to mention Heathcliff's absence as long as we could avoid it, so I said I had no idea why she decided to stay up, and she remained silent. The morning was crisp and cool. I opened the window, and the room soon filled with the garden's sweet fragrances, but Catherine called out irritably, "Ellen, close the window. I'm freezing." Her teeth chattered as she huddled closer to the dying embers. "She's unwell," Hindley said, taking her wrist. "I suppose that's why she wouldn't go to bed." "Damn it! I don't want more illness here. What made you go out in the rain?" "Chasing after the lads, as usual," croaked Joseph, seizing the chance from our pause to inject his spiteful remark. "If I were you, master, I'd slam the doors in all their faces, gentlefolk and commoners alike. Not a day goes by when you're away that Linton doesn't sneak over here. And Miss Nellie, she's a fine lass. She sits in the kitchen watching for you, and as soon as you come in one door, he's slipping out the other, and then our grand lady goes courting on her own. It's quite the spectacle, lurking in the fields past midnight with that vile, fearsome gypsy Heathcliff. They think I'm blind, but I'm not, far from it. I saw young Linton coming and going, and I saw you." He directed his words at me. "You good-for-nothing, slovenly witch. You dashed into the house the moment you heard the master's horse hooves clattering up the road." "Silence, you eavesdropper!" cried Catherine. "Don't you dare be insolent in front of me. Edgar Linton came by chance yesterday, Hindley, and it was I who told him to leave, because I knew you wouldn't want to meet him as you were." "You lie, Cathy, no doubt," her brother retorted, "and you're a downright fool. But never mind Linton for now. Tell me, weren't you with Heathcliff last night? Speak the truth. You don't need to worry about harming him, though I hate him as much as ever. He did me a good turn recently that makes my conscience reluctant to break his neck. To prevent any further trouble, I'll send him packing this very morning. And once he's gone, I suggest you all stay alert. I'll only be in a better mood for it. I didn't see Heathcliff last night, Catherine replied, her voice breaking into bitter sobs. And if you do throw him out, I'll go with him. But maybe you won't get the chance. Maybe he's already left. At this, she dissolved into uncontrollable grief, her words becoming a blur of emotion. Hindley unleashed a torrent of scornful abuse at her, ordering her to her room immediately, warning that she wouldn't cry for nothing. I had to make her comply, and I'll never forget the scene she created once we reached her room. It was terrifying. I feared she was losing her mind and pleaded with Joseph to fetch the doctor. It marked the onset of delirium. Mr. Kenneth, upon seeing her, declared her dangerously ill. She had a fever. He bled her and instructed me to keep her on a diet of whey and water gruel and to ensure she didn't throw herself down the stairs or out the window. Then he left, as he had plenty to attend to in the parish, where cottages were miles apart. Though I can't claim to have been a gentle nurse, and Joseph and the master were no better, and despite our patient being as difficult and stubborn as one could be, she pulled through. Old Mrs. Linton visited us several times, setting things right, scolding and directing us all, and when Catherine was on the mend, she insisted on taking her to Thrushcross Grange, a deliverance for which we were immensely grateful. The poor woman soon regretted her act of kindness. She and her husband both caught the fever and died within days of each other. Our young lady returned to us, more insolent, more passionate, and more arrogant than ever. Heathcliff had vanished without a trace since the night of the thunderstorm, and one day, when she had pushed me too far, I made the mistake of blaming his disappearance on her, rightly so, as she was well aware. From that moment on, for several months, she refused to communicate with me except in the capacity of a mere servant. Joseph also fell out of favour. He insisted on speaking his mind and lecturing her as if she was still a child, but she saw herself as a woman, our mistress, and believed her recent illness entitled her to special treatment. The doctor had warned that she shouldn't be crossed much. She ought to have her own way, and to her it was nothing short of murder for anyone to dare contradict her. She kept her distance from Mr. Earnshaw and his friends, guided by Kenneth and the serious threat of a fit that often accompanied her rages. Her brother granted her every demand, and generally avoided provoking her fiery temper. He was overly indulgent of her whims, not out of affection, but pride. He was eager to see her bring honour to the family by marrying into the Lintons, and as long as she left him in peace, she could treat us like slaves for all he cared. Edgar Linton, like many before and after him, was utterly smitten. He believed himself the happiest man alive on the day he led her to Gimmerton Chapel, 3 years after his father's death. Much against my will, I was persuaded to leave Wuthering Heights and accompany her here. Little Hareton was nearly 5 years old, and I had just started teaching him his letters. Our farewell was sorrowful, but Catherine's tears were more compelling than our own when I refused to leave, and her pleas failed to sway me. She went to her husband and brother in distress. Her husband offered me generous wages, while her brother commanded me to pack up, declaring he wanted no women in the house now that there was no mistress. As for Hareton, he said the curate would eventually take charge of him. Thus, I had no choice but to comply. I told the master he was driving away all decent people, hastening his own downfall. I kissed Hareton goodbye, and since then he has become a stranger to me. It's strange to think, but I'm certain he has completely forgotten Ellen Dean, and that he was once everything to her, as she was to him. At this point in the housekeeper's tale, she happened to glance at the clock above the fireplace, and was astonished to see it was 1:30. She refused to stay a moment longer. Truth be told, I was inclined to postpone the continuation of the story myself. Now that she has retired for the night, and after pondering for another hour or two, I will gather the resolve to retire as well, despite the weariness that grips my head and limbs.